It's fascinating how even the most everyday items like forks, knives, and spoons have rich histories. The use of these utensils in Western cultures evolved over centuries, shaped by practicality, social norms, and even religion. Here's an overview of how forks, knives, and spoons became staples of the Western dining table. Knives, the oldest utensil. Origins. Knives are the oldest dining tool, with early humans using sharp stones and bones for cutting food over 2 million years ago. As metalworking developed, people began to use bronze, iron, and later steel knives. These were multi-purpose tools used both for hunting and eating. Role in dining. In ancient times, knives were essential for cutting large chunks of meat, which was a central part of the diet. Each diner would typically carry their own knife. In fact, knives were personal tools often brought to the table, even in the early European Middle Ages, 5th to 15th centuries. It wasn't until the Renaissance period, 14th to 17th centuries, that table manners began to shift away from this personal knife culture. Rounded tips. In the 1600s, Cardinal Richelieu of France, chief minister to Louis XIII, was said to have ordered his servants to file down the points of dining knives because he found them to be too dangerous and violent. This is how table knives developed the rounded tips we see today. To spoons, a tool for liquids origins. Spoons are one of the oldest utensils, dating back to prehistoric times when people used seashells, wood, or bone to scoop food. Ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans also used spoons made of wood, bronze, or silver. European spread. Spoons became more sophisticated with time, and during the Middle Ages, wealthy Europeans often carried personal spoons, which were used primarily for soups and stews. Spoons made from precious materials like silver were status symbols among the wealthy. Standardization. By the 16th and 17th centuries, spoons had become standardized as part of table settings, with distinct sizes for different courses, such as the soup spoon or dessert spoon. It became common in Europe, especially in England, for spoons to be given as gifts during important life events like baptisms and weddings. Forks, a controversial arrival. Origins. Forks were slow to gain acceptance in Europe. They were used in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, but only for cooking and serving, not for eating. Forks as dining utensils first appeared in the Byzantine Empire, modern-day Turkey, in the 7th century. Religious resistance. When the fork was introduced to Italy through Byzantine princesses in the 11th century, it was viewed with suspicion by the church. Forks were seen as unnatural because they mimicked the devil's trident, and using a fork to eat food instead of one's hands was considered sinful by some religious leaders. Italian nobility. By the 16th century, forks began gaining popularity in Italy, especially among the nobility. Catherine de' Medici of Italy is often credited with introducing the fork to France when she married King Henry II in 1533. This helped make fork usage more fashionable among the French aristocracy. Acceptance in France and England. While the French aristocracy began adopting the fork, it wasn't until the late 17th century that forks gained wider acceptance in France and England. Before that, people still used their hands and knives to eat. It was during the reign of King Louis XIV of France, 1638-1715, that forks became an essential part of the dining experience, and formal table settings began including them. Adoption in England. Forks were slower to catch on in England, and even as late as the 1600s, many Englishmen considered forks to be an unnecessary foreign fad. But by the 18th century, as dining customs and etiquette evolved, forks became an accepted part of the table setting throughout Europe. For development of the modern table setting. By the 18th century, all three utensils, fork, knife, and spoon, had become standard in Europe. Formal dining etiquette developed around this trio, with distinct cutlery for each course of the meal. The Victorian era, 19th century, further refined these customs, introducing elaborate table settings with specialized forks, e.g., salad fork, dessert fork, spoons, and knives for different courses. This was also a period when eating with one's hands was deemed improper in Western high society. The influence of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, 18th to 19th centuries, played a key role in making cutlery affordable for the masses. Before this, high-quality cutlery was often made of silver and was a luxury item. With the advent of mass production, stainless steel cutlery became widely available, making forks, knives, and spoons common household items. Cultural shift in eating habits. As these utensils became ingrained in European dining etiquette, the Western approach to eating became more formalized. Unlike in Asia, where chopsticks symbolize community and shared dishes, Western dining evolved with an emphasis on individual servings and the separation of courses, contributing to the distinct use of forks, knives, and spoons. Thus, just as chopsticks evolved in East Asia for practical reasons, forks, knives, and spoons developed in Europe due to changing social norms, religious influences, and the refinement of dining etiquette. Summary of Western utensil history. Knives. The oldest utensil, originally a personal tool, evolved to have rounded tips in the 17th century to encourage gentler dining manners. Spoons. Used since ancient times for soups and stews. Spoons were one of the first utensils to be widely accepted for table use. Forks. The last of the trio to gain widespread acceptance, forks faced resistance due to cultural and religious reasons, but gradually became a staple by the 17th and 18th centuries.